Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode number 26 of the World of Sports podcast. My name is Diego Sandoval, joined alongside my co-host Logan Ring. Logan, say what's up to the people.
What's up, everybody?
Today we've got a great episode in front of us. We're going to be doing our Super Bowl preview, giving our NBA Week 6 takeaways, and talking about MLB Free Agency kind of heating up and moves are starting to get made. Um, As always, if you'd like to follow this podcast on Instagram, Twitter, or TikTok, go do it at TWOS Podcast on Twitter and Instagram, at the World of Sports Podcast on TikTok. Going to be posting a lot more content out there. I know I've been kind of slow on the grind, but we'll get back on there. Um, and yeah, let's get right into it. As always, we start off with some breaking news, kind of breaking, more like news from around the week. Starting in the NFL, Antonio Brown, Antoine Winfield Jr., Le'Veon Bell, and Sammy Watkins, they all missed the NFC and AFC championship games. They are going to be ready for the Super Bowl. So obviously, all those guys, really kind of skill position players that these two teams are going to need to win next week. They're coming back, so that's good for both teams. Matthew Stafford is likely to leave the Lions this offseason. I think it's about time. Stafford's been one of the most talented quarterbacks in the league, but he's on the Lions. Hasn't won much. The Lions are famous for wasting away careers. Um, so I see Matthew Stafford going to a team like the Washington football team, maybe a young team that needs a quarterback. Um, the Patriots are another option. But yeah, Matthew Stafford is leaving the Lions this offseason. Jason Witten is retiring again. He had all those seasons with the Cowboys. He retired for one season, then he came back and played a season with the Raiders, and he just signed a one-day contract and has retired as a Cowboy. So great career for Jason Witten. And now, probably the most absolutely drawn out news of the offseason it's not even the offseason yet, but for the NFL is this whole Deshaun Watson situation. He formally requested a trade this week, but right after that, the Texans came out and was like, "Hey, we want to keep him." And then they brought in a head coach, and the head coach this morning said that the reason why he's here is because he thinks Deshaun Watson is staying. Um, that doesn't make sense to me.
No, I mean, he clearly wants out. He's said that no matter what coach is there, he's going to leave. So, I mean, I don't know really what the Texans are trying to do here, but I mean, they're trying to keep him obviously, but it's just not going to work out. We've seen in other sports where if your superstar wants out, he's going to get out. And I mean, I guess like the one example of that not happening is like Kobe, but obviously that's a very different situation. So
Yeah.
he's going to get traded. I don't really think they can do much about it.
Mm-hmm. And I think we're kind of starting to see a shift in the NFL. It kind of started with Antonio Brown. He didn't really handle it well, though, obviously. But, for the past, 5 or so years in the NBA, if a player wanted to get traded, they'd get traded. And that was never really a thing in professional sports. It was always kind of it was up to the organization. But we're starting to see, starting with Deshaun Watson, he's a top 5 quarterback talent in the NFL, led the league in passing yards last year, just had no weapons around him. Um, he wants out, and I think that he should get out. I think that the Texans would get a lot in return, like a lot, um, just because we've never seen a quarterback get traded at this point in his career, really, where he's literally just entered his prime, and we've already seen what he can do. So if I was the Texans, I would trade him. Um, Staying on that news, it was reported that the Panthers are planning to pursue Deshaun Watson. I think that'd be a great move for them. They probably move Teddy Bridgewater and some picks, I'm assuming. But I think, pairing Deshaun Watson with all those weapons on offense, Christian McCaffrey, DJ Moore, Robbie Anderson, that'd make that team very good. And they honestly could compete with, but the Bucks and Brady in the NFC South, I think, next year, especially. Who knows? We're going to talk about Tom Brady later, but that man doesn't age. So, yeah, we'll see. Moving on to NBA news, the New Orleans Pelicans are open to trading Lonzo Ball and JJ Redick. Um, I think the reason they want to do this is because they're kind of in a win now mode with just because they've got all these guys and they're so hyped up that they feel like they have to win now. And I don't think Lonzo is the point guard to win right now. I don't think. I think Eric Bledsoe has done a pretty good job joining in on that team. Um, but yeah, I think that's the right direction that they're going.
Yeah, he's also on an expiring contract, and he has really never even like discussed coming back. It looks like he's going to leave. So I think their idea is that they want something back for him. And I think some team is going to pay him a lot of money next season because they're going to convince themselves that he's still super good. And I think he still does have that potential. He's really not been aggressive this year at all. It's kind of sad to see. When he was in LA, he was driving to the basket, and now he's basically just like a 3-and-D player, which is not what he is. And also JJ Redick, he's had a tough season so far, but he's one of the best 3-point shooters in the league. Really, nobody else can do what he can do on the catch and shoot, who's not going to be getting paid like max money. So these are two pieces that I think they could get a return for. And the Pelicans have just been really disappointing so far this season. So they need to make some moves to, I don't know, either try to make the playoffs or just try to get into the best situation they can next season.
Yeah, because Lonzo, his whole career, and when I talk about career, I'm even going back to college and even high school because that's kind of when he burst onto the scene. He's always been a playmaker with the ball in his hands. At UCLA, at Chino Hills, even on the Lakers at times. But I think just having Brandon Ingram and Zion on that team, who are obvious scoring options ahead of him, um, kind of has forced him into this role that just doesn't fit his play style. LeVar Ball's dream. He leaves this offseason and signs with the Hornets. That's 2 out of 3 on the team. That's what he said is going to happen. Wouldn't put it past that man to literally predict the future. So we'll see. We'll see. But yeah, I do think Lonzo has that potential. He just has to get put in the right situation. Karis LeVert had a pretty scary kind of couple weeks there where we didn't really know what happened. He was part of the big James Harden trade. He went to the Pacers. It was discovered during his physical that he had a mass on his kidney. Nobody kind of knew what that meant. But a couple of days ago, he did undergo successful kidney surgery, and he is expected to make a full recovery. So great news for Karis LeVert. He came out and said that trade may have saved his life. So that's pretty crazy that he just wouldn't have known about it. So yeah, shout out Karis LeVert. Come back soon. I need you on my fantasy team. Moving on. Last piece of news from the NBA: Wendell Carter Jr. of the Chicago Bulls is out 4+ weeks with a severe right quad contusion. Tough blow.
Yeah, I mean, the Bulls aren't really doing anything this season, but
Yeah.
he's one of their young pieces, so this just sucks. He was looking really good too. I was trying to get him in fantasy, but now he's out for 4+ weeks. So yeah, rough for him. He'll get back though.
Yeah, it's always tough to see, when a team is young like the Bulls and trying to rebuild. When a young guy goes out for an extended period of time, it's kind of like screws with that chemistry that they've been building on. So, yeah, prayers up to Wendell Carter. Moving on to our MLB news, we actually got a lot. Now we're just kind of gonna touch on them here and there, and then later on, one of the segments is MLB free agency talk, so we'll go into more depth then. JT Romuto has re-signed with the Philadelphia Phillies, 5 years, $115 million. Pretty simple, great move for the Phillies. The best probably offensive catcher in the league. Really no debate as to whether or not that was a good move for the Phillies.
For sure.
The Blue Jays have signed Marcus Semien, 1 year, $18 million deal. Dude, Blue Jays making moves.
They're all in this year.
Yeah. I'm kind of I'm assuming maybe Vladimir Guerrero goes to the DH, but he's a good third baseman. It's just that infield seems very crowded to me right now, but who knows what they're thinking. Um, but Marcus Simeon, just a great all around hitter, I would say. He was with the A's for most of his career, and I think he was an All Star a couple of years ago. But yeah, I think that's another great signing for the Blue Jays. Speaking of the Blue Jays, they acquired Steven Matz in a trade with the Mets for 3 prospects. Prospects weren't even named, so unless it's a kind of superhero story, I think this is a good move for the Blue Jays. Steven Matz has had couple pretty good years in his career. Overall, he's just been kind of a solid starter, um, which I think the Blue Jays, that's kind of their last piece. They're already kind of assembling that offense. They just need to sure up that starting rotation. So I think Steven Matz is a good move for the Blue Jays. Moving on, the Minnesota Twins have signed Andrelton Simmons. Um, Good. He's a defensive shortstop. There's not much to say. They signed him. I think that's a good move. Um, they are a pretty offense heavy team. So we'll see what he kind of brings to the table in terms of that. He's not a bad offensive, player, but he's obviously very defensive minded. And then the Boston Red Sox have signed Kike Hernandez, former Dodger. I saw it coming. He wasn't an everyday starter on the Dodgers, and he kind of deserved to be. And that's also the case for this next guy. But Kike Hernandez with the Red Sox, he'll probably start every day. Reunited with Alex Verdugo. Yeah, good luck to Kike. Gonna miss you. Jock Peterson, same kind of situation. He signed with the Cubs. He just wasn't starting every day. The Dodgers have so many outfielders, AJ Pollock, Mookie Betts, Cody Bellinger. None of those guys are going to start over those guys. So, good for them. They're going to go find starting roles. Yeah. I think Kike's is a 2-year deal and Jock Peterson's is a 1-year deal. So, yeah. Again, lots of news in the MLB. So we're going to keep going. Brewers are listening to offers for Josh Hader. We're going to talk about this later, but Hader has kind of showed, especially in the postseason, a couple years back, that he's legit. He's a legit reliever in the MLB. He's got some nasty stuff. I think a lot of contenders are going to have their eye out for him in terms of maybe wanting to trade for like prospects. Masahiro Tanaka, I think he spent 7 years with the Yankees, around that. He is returning to Japan. He is going to play for the Tohoku Rakuten Golden Eagles. Dude, Japanese baseball has the coolest names. Like when like everything got shut down, the only like sports that was playing was the Korean baseball organization, and they had the coolest mascots. The team that like won the championship or World Series or whatever they have they're like the dinos or something. Let me see this here. And like the mascot is like a dinosaur with this big ass gold chain.
That's pretty epic.
The NC Dinos, pretty sick. But yeah. That being said, Masahiro Tanaka to Japan. Cool. Trevor Bauer, probably the biggest free agent of the offseason. As of right now, he's kind of being a little bit secretive about it. He's posting a lot of stuff on his YouTube where he's like telling you what I want in free agency, but actually not explaining much. He's always just kind of like, oh, I'm looking at all different kinds of contracts. I'm looking at all different locations. So that really says nothing. Trevor Bauer, come on this podcast, give us some inside scoop. But it has been reported that the Mets and the Dodgers are in on Trevor Bauer. The report is that they are both looking at around 3 to 4 years. I'm assuming around $30 million a year, given that price range or that time range. So we'll talk about Bauer later, but those two teams are in the running. And the Mets and the Blue Jays. These are two teams I think we talked about last episode or 2 episodes ago that the most exciting teams to watch next season, and the Mets and Jays were both on there. They are in the mix this offseason. They're both been rumored to trade for Chris Bryant.
That could be huge for either of them. They're both kind of all in this season. And I mean, they're both going to be exciting. We talked about it, but they already have a bunch of pieces, and Chris Bryant is obviously still super good. And yeah, I don't really know how they're going to get them, but I don't know. He'd be perfect for both of them.
Mm-hmm. And both of those teams have a large amount of prospects and just items to be moved, and it looks like the Cubs are kind of entering a rebuild almost. If they're trading away Chris Bryant, I think that's kind of waving the red flag or the white flag that you're going to start kind of revamping your organization. But yeah, and then the final piece of news that nobody made the Baseball Hall of Fame. Barry Bonds has one more year.
And the Baseball Hall of Fame is really confusing to me because they got some messed up people in there, like straight up racists. But I mean, if I don't know, it's just kind of like Barry Bonds probably. I don't like him because he cheated, but he deserves to be in there. I don't know.
Yeah. There's the whole argument that everybody did steroids in the 90s, and once they started testing, he never tested positive. So there's that whole thing. I think bottom line, I think everyone can agree that Pete Rose should be in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
All the man did was bet on himself. How badass is that to just like be like, you know what, I'm a ball.
I don't know how that's not allowed, but
I mean,
that's just being confident.
But also, yeah, back then sports betting was just like totally frowned upon, and now it's a whole like just crazy side of our economics that everyone bets on sports. So I don't know. But yeah, Hall of Fame, nobody got the required, I believe it's like 75% of ballots. So yeah, that's all we got for news. Lots of news today. So moving on, we have our Super Bowl preview. Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Kansas City Chiefs, Mahomes versus Brady, old GOAT versus possible future GOAT, the way that he's playing and the team looks. I think the Chiefs are building a dynasty, if we're being completely honest. Andy Reid is a top 3 coach in the NFL. Patrick Mahomes is there for 10 years. Mahomes and Kelsey are there for 4 more. And that's really all you need. You know, there's the argument. There always was the argument that defense wins championships. I would pretty much stand on the side that offense wins championships now.
I don't think any defense is stopping this Chiefs team.
Exactly. In terms of the matchup, I'd say the Chiefs are better offensively, and the Bucks are better defensively, but the defensive advantage really doesn't matter because you're playing Patrick Mahomes and all of his weapons that he has with him.
Yeah, I don't want to just count Tom Brady out too.
Yeah, there is the cardinal rule to not bet against Tom Brady, but
his GOAT conversation is there's just so much stuff there.
I think he is the GOAT at this point.
I agree. I really don't like him because of how long he was on the Patriots, but you got to respect the guy. And if he pulls this off, I mean, that's one of the craziest things I've seen in football. And I didn't think he was going to make it this far, not even close. So I just want to give him his props. He deserves it. He's played great. Actually, he last game he actually didn't play that well.
He didn't, but
he figured it out.
Right. He
got
wins.
the job done.
Bottom line is Brady, he'll put up his stats, but he's majority a kind of game manager, and he knows how to win games. And I mean, obviously with how long he's played and how long he's going to keep playing, he'll be up there in the stats no matter what. But he just knows how to win, and he'll do whatever it takes. And the reason why he gets hated on is because he wins so much. And also he fumbled against the Raiders in 2002, but that's okay. And he cheated a couple times, but you have to respect the fact that he is the best football player to ever play in the NFL. It's just
And he's not
bottom
even
line.
done yet, and he's like 60 years old.
Dude,
It's
I could see
crazy.
him playing like 4 more years. That's so crazy. But yeah, all that being said, the Chiefs are too talented. I don't think they're losing.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think the Chiefs are winning this, but I think this is going to be really exciting.
Yeah, and I, I, I don't know if the Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes are going to kind of turn into what Brady and the Patriots were in terms of like people don't like them because they are just always in the Super Bowl. I feel like Mahomes is a bit more likable than Tom Brady, but I don't know. Even as a Raiders fan, I don't hate the Chiefs that much. At least not yet.
Yeah, I think they got a while to go
Yeah.
before that's sort of compared.
But yeah, let's get a score. Score prediction. I am going to go Chiefs 31, Buccaneers 24.
All right. I'm going to go higher.
Ooh.
Chiefs 38, Bucks 28.
Ooh, okay. Okay. There you have it. One of those is 100% going to happen.
Yeah.
Oh, I almost forgot. Ashton Pelly, great friend of the podcast. He DM'd our Instagram account at TWOS podcast. He said, I need a shout out because before the playoffs started, I predicted the Bucks going to the Super Bowl. So shout out Ashton. He also has his own podcast, the Gift of Gab podcast. I have starred in it once, but it's a great podcast. They really just talk about everything in life. It's pretty dope. Um, Go check them out. I think they're on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and YouTube. So shout out Ashton. Congratulations on your prediction.
Also, just real quick before we move on, I just got a report that a bettor has placed $2.3 million on Tampa winning.
Wow.
So
What's the
that's a
payout on
lot.
that? What are the odds at right now? I think it's Chiefs minus 3.5 for the spread, which I feel like the Chiefs will cover. I don't know what the betting odds
Yeah.
are, but the Bucks are definite underdogs, so that would pay out to a lot of money.
He
I'm
would
assuming.
win a net $2 million
Yeah,
if they win.
double his money. All right, good luck to that guy. You're gonna lose your money based on our airtight predictions. So yeah, that's our Super Bowl preview. Brady's the GOAT, but the Chiefs are a better team. Moving on to our NBA Week 6 takeaways. Again, we do this every week. It is now Week 6 of the NBA season. And I think the biggest story of the past week is the Utah Jazz. They kind of, they were 4-4 to start the season. And they've won 10 straight. And that now puts them at first in the Western Conference. And I know seeding means a little bit, but like LeBron has came out and said, like, I don't care what seed I'm in, I play different in the playoffs. So it's like, it's sure seeding means it. So they're the 1 seed. Congratulations. Utah Jazz, they've looked very good. Donovan Mitchell, Rudy Gobert kind of started off literally scoring like 4 points a game, but he's kind of picked it up and he's starting to get his 15 to 20 rebounds every day. Donovan Mitchell obviously is leading that team. He's their lead scoring option. Jordan Clarkson, my pick for sixth man of the year, is playing well.
It's looking like a good pick.
I think he's averaging like 17 points or something. And then Mike Conley has been solid too. I think he's averaging around 16 or 17 as well. So that Utah Jazz team, and don't forget they were up 3-1 on the Nuggets. They kind of choked, and the Nuggets ended up beating the Clippers. So this team plays in the playoffs, and I think that if they keep this kind of going, obviously they're not going to never lose again. But if they keep playing like they are, this team could make a little bit of a run. I'm not saying they're going to beat the Lakers, but they could make a little bit of a run in the playoffs.
I just want to shout out Quinn Snyder, the head coach. he's kind of revamped this team, and they're shooting the most threes in the league now, which is what they haven't done in the last basically their entire history of that team. Um, and I don't think that the Jazz get enough credit for like just they win, like they're in the playoffs almost every year. They're kind of like the Spurs with that.
Yeah.
And the Jazz look really good. I saw last game Mitchell was out with a concussion, and they beat the Mavs by like 20, 30 points. Um, and it was really solid. They just looked so much better. Also, Bojan Bogdanovic scored 20 points last season, and he's really not even found his shot yet. So
Mm-hmm.
they can be a lot better than they are now. And I think that they're really solid.
Yeah.
So moving on to the next team, I just wanted to talk about the Houston Rockets. This is post James Harden, kind of no expectations, and they've looked really fun. Since Oladipo has got there, they're 4-1, and they haven't played the best competition, but they're still playing solid teams. Um, Oladipo, Wall, and Wood look really good together. The John Wall, Oladipo sort of backcourt was kind of like, I don't really know how this is going to work out with not a ton of shooting, but they look really good. Wood is averaging 25 and 13. I think that he's probably, if he's up there in most improved voting for
Yeah.
sure. Oladipo is 22, 5 and 5, and Wall is 17 and 6. They just look really good. And like I said, because they have no expectations, I think this is just kind of like nobody really is disliking them, and it's kind of just a fun team.
Yeah. It was like when Harden left, it was like, okay, the Rockets are like another team or one of the few teams that won't really be in the playoff race in the West just because it's so competitive. Everyone kind of expects the Rockets to be in there when they have James Harden. But when he left, everyone was like, okay, they're probably gonna, figure out what they're doing with their team this year. But like Oladipo's come in and played really well. Obviously Christian Wood is right now, I'd say he's the most improved player. That you could argue that it's just because he's getting more minutes, but um, he's just played really well as their kind of center. DeMarcus Cousins played well when he was out. Um, and then John Wall was kind of a really big question mark going into the season after missing 2 full seasons, and he's looked really good. Um, I don't think a lot of people expected him to do this good. I didn't. I kind of thought that he'd be more of a role player, but he's kind of taken over the reins as that lead point guard for this team. So I think the Rockets are looking good right now.
And they still got all those picks where they can
Right.
swap players and get, or just get draft picks.
Exactly. They're in a position where they have the ability to either go all in or kind of build around these guys they have now. So we'll see what they do. My third thing, my second takeaway, our third takeaway, is that Luka Doncic is back at his MVP level. He kind of started off a bit slow. He wasn't really, scoring much, stuffing the stats like he did towards the end of last season. Um, but he's been playing a lot better with Kristaps back in the lineup, and Kristaps hasn't been doing much in terms of numbers, but I think that's kind of allowed Luka to, he was getting double teamed a lot when he was really the only above average scoring option on that team. And he's back up at averaging almost a triple double, 27 points, 9 assists, 9 rebounds. He was our MVP choice at the beginning of the season. And one of the things I said was that he's one of the few guys that can average like a 27, 28 point triple double. And he's pretty close to doing that. Um, but yeah, Luka is, I won't say back. He never left, but he started off slow, and everyone was kind of like, "Oh, were we overhyping him?" But I think he's back.
I don't think people are appreciating what's happening. I mean, he's averaging a 27-point triple double, and he's 21 years old. This
Yeah,
is his
he's
third
crazy.
season. And he's not a great 3-point shooter yet, but he's shooting pretty efficiently from the field overall. And this is insanely impressive. And it seems like nobody's really talking about it. The Mavs aren't a top team, but they're still there in the hunt, and I mean, they're really solid. They didn't even have Kristaps for the first like 12 games of the season. So I think they'll figure it out, and he's looking really impressive.
Mm-hmm.
For the last takeaway, my second is kind of a sad one,
Yeah.
but the Wizards have to trade Bradley Beal, even if he doesn't request it. And to Bradley Beal, please request a
Request
trade.
the trade.
I know you're loyal. I know you want to be there, but you are wasting your career there right now. And
He looks so sad on the
he looks
bench
so
after
sad.
every loss.
Yeah, just a couple stats. They're 3-11, which is the worst record in the entire league. My other note is that Beal looks depressed, which is
Yeah.
true. And he's leading the league in scoring at 35.4 points per game. And he's doing it really efficiently. And in the last 6 games, they are 1-5, and Beal is averaging 41 points, 6 rebounds, and 5 assists. I don't really know what else somebody can do. I hate to say it because I love Russell Westbrook, but he does not look good in the league anymore. Maybe it's just not the right fit, but I don't know. He just does not fit with this team at all. And Beal, he just has no help. It's just really sad.
Yeah. ESPN posted something the other day. Bradley Beal's last 6 games, you mentioned it. 47 points, 6 assists, loss. 33 points, 5 rebounds, loss. 31.7 rebounds, loss. 34 points, 9 assists, win. 41 points, loss. 60.7 rebounds, loss. A good NBA basketball team shouldn't lose a game where your superstar scores 60 points.
He just scored 47 last game too.
Yeah.
And they lost.
I mean, it's so bad because they came in and it was like Westbrook and Beal. Beal finally got his kind of partner in crime back after John Wall was out for two years, and just hasn't worked out. I saw a thing that said Russell Westbrook has the same amount of shots as he does points this year, which is not good, by the way. If you think about it, every shot should be 2 or 3 points. But, Bradley Beal is in the argument for best scorer in the NBA. He's leading the league in scoring. But pure scorer, Bradley Beal is up there. He could really do everything. So it sucks to see that this is literally, we're just watching his prime kind of just fall apart on the Wizards.
Yeah, and he's not old yet. He's, like you said, he's still in his prime. So if he gets traded to a team that can contend, I mean, that's the best situation. I don't think there's any way where he can't really fit into a team. It doesn't seem like he's a guy that's going to take away other shots or anything like that. And also, he's like best friends with John Wall, and this trade just seems really bad right now.
I feel like it's screwed with him, the John Wall thing. Like, he just lost all hope in the Wizards.
And like everything he says, he's always like, man, I just hate losing, but like I'm not, like I don't want to leave this team.
Yeah, because it's his team. Like, a reporter asked him, "Are you frustrated?" He said, "Is the sky blue?"
Yeah,
that's the famous response for "this sucks."
Yeah.
So we'll see.
It does just suck.
Right now, neither side has really expressed wanting a trade. Obviously, Bradley Beal's shown that he's upset, but he's never came out and said, "I don't want to be here anymore." And the Wizards haven't come out and said, we want to move on from him. We want him to, go somewhere else. So we'll see. I don't even know if you can call him a disgruntled superstar, because he wants to be there. He's just upset with how the team's playing.
Yeah, I think he'll get there. I don't. Yeah. He looked like he was losing it last game, and I really do not blame him.
Yeah, he deserves better.
Yeah, there's no real like news about like where he would go or anything because he hasn't requested a trade. But I think an interesting one would be the Nuggets. And this could be a different segment for other podcasts, but they have a lot of young pieces that they could trade, and they're contenders. So I think that would be a fun team.
Yeah, get Denny Avdia some more minutes, see what he can do.
Yeah.
All right. that's all we got for our NBA takeaways. Our third and final segment of the podcast is our MLB free agency talk. Now I kind of touched on a bunch of moves that were made. Um, I just put down some players that we talked about a little bit or didn't talk about earlier. And the big one's Trevor Bauer. Um, like I said, he's kind of approaching this whole free agency thing a lot different than other players are. He's posting a bunch of like vlogs to YouTube about, where he's going to visit teams, but also not really. He's just kind of like, well, we're thinking of everything. Um, it looks like the Mets and the Dodgers right now.
I really like that Bauer is kind of taking a different approach to this. It's kind of cool to see like a player's mindset in free agency because we never really get that. And he's a Cy Young winner. I mean, he's going to get paid a lot, so
Yeah.
he kind of gets to choose where he goes. But yeah, either Dodgers or Mets, either team would be a great fit.
Yeah. Um, if you don't follow him on Twitter, he's a fantastic follow because, someone, a journalist or a reporter or a beat writer will report that Bauer is interested in so blah, blah, blah. And then Trevor Bauer will just retweet it and say, no, I'm not. Like, and he's been very vocal that to like not trust any notifications you get unless it comes from him or his agent. So it's interesting because he's a very entertaining player. He kind of um is breaks a lot of baseball's quote unquote traditional barriers, which I'm a fan of. I think the game should keep moving forward as much as it can. Um, we can have this discussion later, but you know, people are trying to change baseball. Don't change the rules. Change what players can do and what you do with players. The MLB is terrible in terms of like marketing players, and just letting people watch baseball games for one. Like, cool, just black out your favorite team in your area. That makes sense. But I think Trevor Bauer, wherever he's going to go, he's going to bring a lot of kind of publicity, and he's been in big market, you could say, being from UCLA, that's kind of where he grew up. He's used to that. But, the Indians and the Reds, they're not really like he didn't have to deal with the media as much. But I think if you went to LA or New York, that'll be very interesting to see. Moving on to the next guy is Josh Hader. We kind of talked about him earlier, but some teams that I put down that would be interested were the Padres, the Dodgers, and the Blue Jays. Those are all teams that are really loaded with prospects, and just have I think all those teams are in the top 5 or 10 in terms of farm systems. And the Brewers, they had their run a couple years ago where they made it to the NLCS, lost to the Dodgers, but I think they're probably going to want prospects, to kind of build up that organization. And I think any team with reliever needs should be looking at Josh Hader.
Yeah, it seems like the top like 5 or 6 teams are kind of in trade discussions for all these
For
players, but
everyone.
yeah, I mean they're all just trying to get better. And Josh Hader is one of the most dominant closers or just relief pitchers that kind of has ever been in the MLB. He's had that season where like nobody even like hit a home run off of him or something,
Yeah.
which is just insane. Um, so yeah, he's just insanely good.
Mm-hmm. The third person and oldest person on this little free agency segment is Justin Turner. As of right now, the 3 teams that have shown interest and that Turner has shown interest in are the Dodgers, the Blue Jays, and the Brewers. He has said that he wants to go to contender. Um, he's getting up there. He wants a 4-year deal, I think, but I don't know if teams are going to want that because by the time that last year, he'll be 40 years old. Um, I see him going back to the Dodgers. I think the Dodgers are willing to pay him the money. He was kind of the quote unquote captain of that team when they, won the World Series, and for the past really couple years when the Dodgers have made those playoff runs, Justin Turner has kind of been the guy to lean on in the playoffs. So I see him re-signing.
Yeah, I think on and off the field is kind of like the same sort of impact for him. like you
Mhm.
said, I mean, he's basically like a player coach sort
Yeah.
of, and he's also really solid too. So I think he's going to be 40. He's already slowing down with his production, but I think he's worth it. He's
Yeah,
worth the money.
for sure. Um, moving on, Marcelo Zuna um, is an interesting one because we really haven't heard much about Marcelo Zuna. His free agency talk has been kind of crickets so far. Um, coming off a really good season against the Braves or with the Braves. Now, it was reported that there are 7 teams in the mix. Those teams are the Red Sox, the Yankees, the Dodgers, the Mets, Twins, the Brewers, and the Braves, and re-signing him. Um, I would say the most interesting fit is probably the Twins because they are a very offense heavy team. Um, you know, they also had Kenta Maeda last year, who was a top 3 Cy Young candidate. Guys like Jose Barrios, who's solid. But I think that if Marcell Ozuna was added to this Twins team, they would break their own home run record.
Yeah, I think he's kind of an underrated offensive player. Doesn't
Mhm.
seem like that many people talk about him, but he is really good. And the Twins already have such an amazing offensive lineup with just the amount of home runs they hit. It's just absolutely insane. Um, but yeah, any team would be nice to have him.
The Red Sox are an interesting one in this conversation because I would consider them to be somewhat rebuilding, especially after having one of the worst records in the MLB last year. But I mean, Marcell Ozuna's 30. He's still kind of at that age where he'll still produce. Um, maybe starting to creep out of his prime, but we'll see. He obviously played really well last year for the Braves, who probably want to re-sign him as well. So there's another team that could most definitely go out and get him. And the last player we want to talk about is kind of an interesting one that kind of sprung up in the last couple days. Um, Nolan Arenado. For the past, I want to say like 3 seasons, he's always been rumored that he's on the trading block and people are talking about him. But obviously his asking price is probably insanely high. He's the Rockies franchise guy. Um, I guess, the Dodgers were trying to, you know, get him last year, but they just couldn't afford it, which is saying something because the Dodgers probably have the most, ability to afford a player and they have the most assets to trade. Um, so it was reported that the Cardinals are in discussion and that the Braves have checked in. So those are 2 teams that obviously would benefit from Arenado, but I think it's about time Arenado leaves Colorado.
I think Diego thinks he's still the best third baseman in the league, or at
Yeah.
least one of them. Um, and I don't want to say he's underrated because people understand how good he is, and if his trade price is more than the Dodgers can afford, then I don't think any team can afford that price. Um, but I think the Rockies need to realize that they're not going to get an entire team for him,
Yeah.
and if they're not going to win it, then you might as well try to get something good for him. I think that they can get a lot of prospects and some solid players. So I don't know. I mean, he can definitely just stay on the team still, and I wouldn't be surprised at all. But
Yeah.
if he gets traded, it'll be fun to see him in a different uniform too.
Yeah. The Rockies have Nolan Arenado and Charlie Blackmon. And, newsflash, that's not going to beat the Dodgers or the Padres. So the I think the Rockies need to move on and need to kind of accept the fact that they're rebuilding. And I think obviously they could get a massive haul of prospects for Nolan Arenado. Um, we'll see. I feel like it's always around January. Nolan Arenado is on the block and being discussed, but it just never comes to fruition. So we'll see. Yeah. And that's all we got for this episode of the podcast, episode 26. Thank you so much if you're still listening. Just to recap, we gave the news from around the leagues for the week, gave our Super Bowl preview, gave our NBA Week 6 takeaways, and then talked about MLB free agency and the best, players remaining on the board and where we think they should go. Again, thank you so much for listening. My name is Diego Sandoval, signing off.
Signing off.